Hey, you caught me buying some comic books off Instagram. What? We'll show you how next.
Welcome to Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John. As always, I am joined by my best buddy Richard. Hi, Richard. What's going on, kid?
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm all right. Getting by. Comic shops are opening again. Things are loosening up a bit. We're still observing all sorts of protocols with masks and what have you, but actually got out and did some funny book shopping this week.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you guys. I saw your haul, so I had to watch from afar. I still haven't made it out yet.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about this week. We are going to talk about buying comics on Instagram. Now, this may seem like obvious news to a lot of people, but to some of the older collectors like myself, this is kind of a new thing. And we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be joined by our special guest, Steven, who you may know from Minor Keys Comics on Instagram. He's going to join us in a few minutes to talk about the pros and cons of buying your comics off Instagram. We're also going to have an artist spotlight on John Byrne, the underrated books of the week. But let's kick it off with Richard. We're going to talk about a hot bronze book this week. Any idea what it is?
Shazam #1?
Shazam #1. Now, why are we picking this book when the movie's come and gone? This book may have seen its peak already. Why are we even talking about it? I'll tell you why. It annoys me. This book is not a scarce book. This is one of those books that came out. It was so anticipated because Captain Marvel was so popular in the 40s and early 50s that when DC announced they had the rights to resume publishing Captain Marvel after forcing Fawcett out of business back in the mid 50s, people were counting on this book to be huge. And so they were taking it right off the distributors' trucks, boxes full, and hoarding them and hoarding this book. So there was a long time there, gosh, at least 25, 30 years after this book came out, that it clogged up quarter boxes and dollar boxes around the country. Do you recall seeing this book at conventions or anything, Richard?
I do remember seeing it. I don't remember seeing it in volume, but it was definitely out there.
I mean, as recently as, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was at a local comic shop in your area, Northeast Ohio, and I was going through their dollar bin, and there were maybe 6 or 7 copies like pressed together, 9.4, 9.6 candidates for $1. And I went whoop, right by them, didn't care. And now I look back and I go, gosh darn it, I kind of wished I had picked up those books. It's kind of an oxymoron to trash this book when it's our hot bronze book of the week, but I just want, I had thoughts about this thing that I just had to get out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It was a hot book. I expected the movie to really make it even more desirable, but it seems to have settled down after the movie, and it's gone back to its steady state.
So while Shazam #1 is, it's still a desirable book, I guess, in 9.8, there's actually an issue that's later in the run when the print run was way lower. In fact, I think the book was quarterly at this point. It was selling so poorly, and they kept it on just because of the TV show in the 70s at the time. But it's a book that you were chasing for quite a while, Richard.
Shazam #28, first appearance of Black Adam, the first Silver Age appearance of Black Adam. Let's say, yeah, definitely. It's a book that I added to my collection because I'm a big Black Adam fan. I'm really looking forward to the movie, and it's my pick from that run.
And again, it's a book that wasn't hoarded. It hasn't got stacks and stacks saved up in a back closet somewhere. So that's actually a book that I think is going to hold its value, especially with The Rock reportedly playing Black Adam. That should be really cool.
Right, and because they have his announcement, we've seen spikes in the price of that book and other Black Adam titles. So definitely looking forward to seeing what happens when the movie comes out.
All right, Richard. Well, I guess it's time for our main topic this week, and it's a good one. It's one that we've been wanting to hit ever since we started this thing, and it's buying books off of Instagram, of all things. Now,
Right.
we're old school, right? Me and you, we're like local comic shop convention kind of guys. And then eBay was like a new innovation for us 20 years ago.
Right.
And, you know, I was buying books out of the back of the CBG, if anybody remembers that.
God, yes.
So it's kind of cool that we have this new way of buying books that kind of dodges a lot of the fees and things that we talked about in the eBay videos. And I'm also super excited because we have our first special guest on Bronze and Modern Gods. And it is someone that we see a lot of on Instagram, which is apropos. His name is Steven, and his Instagram handle is Minor Keys Comics. And there he is. What's up,
Hey,
Steven?
gentlemen. What's going on, gentlemen? Thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, thanks for being on. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
I'm glad you're excited because I'm a little nervous because this one is a little bit of a hot potato in some respects, in my opinion. I have some thoughts here about Instagram, but let's start. Richard, you're the one that kind of turned me on to buying and selling on Instagram, and so tell us a little bit about your experience when you started.
It's really interesting. You know, I started off, I just created an account and I just started listing comics that I had, and I got to find different people who were selling comics online. And you know, there's always that doubt or that question in your mind, can you trust this other person? But certain people had a great following and seemed to have that kind of trustworthiness. I jumped into a live auction, a claim auction, and I placed a claim on a particular item. It was pretty straightforward. I got the item. They sent me a PayPal invoice, and then the item arrived at my doorstep. It was pretty straightforward. No eBay fees, no listing, you know, nothing. It was simply a transaction between two individuals. If you can establish that trust, it's a great way of buying comics.
Well, let's walk it back a second. When you say you claim something, Stephen, tell us what that means, if you know.
Well, claim just means I want it. I want that book. Somebody started that vernacular. I don't know when. I don't know where that started, but the word claim is the universal term for that's my book. I'm agreeing to pay for this book at the price that you are mentioning.
Now, I get a little confused because you guys know Instagram's algorithm. A hexalogarithm. The algorithm is weird because you don't see things chronologically like you used to when they first launched. And so I get a little frustrated because I started looking, you know, I started following all these people that were selling, and I would see a book that went up 8 hours ago, you know, and it's got an instant claim on it. Has anybody found a workaround for this?
I mean, I always turn on post notifications for my favorite sellers. I probably have 15 people that I have post notifications turned on for. I try to filter them out because I don't want it to get too clunky where I'm just ignoring my phone because the messages the notifications keep coming in. So I keep it around 15 people that I know that do posts in sets, maybe 5 or 6 at a time, and then I'll messages, and then I'll immediately go to that person's page and I'll sit there and I'll refresh because these are the people that I know that A, I've done transactions with before, and B, really have good prices. So
now, again, like I said, I'm very old school in that I'm very nervous about buying off Instagram. I've done it a couple of times. I've obviously found a few people I trust, but for me, there's like that little nagging part of like, I don't have any kind of fail safe here if something doesn't work out, especially when people tell you, hey, pay me friends and family.
Right.
Has anybody had any nightmare scenarios yet?
I've been very lucky, very fortunate. I actually started my Instagram buying I linked up with somebody that I had found on Facebook, that I followed a page called Vintage Comics on Facebook. And that's actually run by Ali at Elite Comics 11 on Instagram. That was my first transaction ever. It was about 1.5 years ago. And I bought a Fantastic Four #1 off of him.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay, you are a brave man.
Fee free and everything. PayPal, friends and family directly from him. I mean, at the time, the man had about 6,000 followers. I reached out to about 6 people that he gave me as references. I cross-referenced them on Facebook, friended them directly, and had one-on-one conversations with them and checked all of their eBay pages and their feedback on eBay. So I used 3 of the resources there to confirm: Instagram, then Facebook, and then eBay.
That's pretty good, but it's so funny you mentioned Ali, because that's one of the people I have listed on my notes here. If you're getting started, who to follow, and I'll put it up on the screen here. It's elite_comics11. And what I really like about what he's doing is he's doing what he's calling the Remedy Tour, where he is every week picking a different local comic shop and having a live claim sale with that shop to move their inventory and really support them during these, I'm going to sound like every commercial on TV now, during these difficult, challenging times. And so he is definitely someone to watch. Richard, what were you going to say?
No, I just want to follow up and say, yeah, Elite Comics 11 has been awesome. I actually bought a 9.8 Amazing Spider-Man 300 from him. It was a difficult transaction, not because he made it difficult, just because I sent all that money through the ether with no safety net, and just the communication he did with me was awesome, and the book showed up and it was a wonderful book. He really set the pace for me in order to trust buying things off Instagram.
I should probably calm down a bit about getting ripped off, because I was the guy, the intro here, talking about sending money orders through the mail to people in the back of the CBG back in the day, and I didn't think twice about it, and I never got ripped off that way. So maybe I should just chill out when it comes to that.
Well, it's a valid concern. I mean, that's the one thing that eBay has an advantage of. They have that buyer protection, where if you have a transaction and something happens to that transaction, either the seller doesn't produce the book, or there's a damaged book, or what have you, you have a recourse to go back to eBay directly and get your money back. And it's a great system, and that safety net is something that they use to justify their fees.
I just want to be clear on something. There is no recourse on Instagram. I know that it sounds like there isn't, like you're sending the money out into the ether, but the community that's in the IG sale community is pretty thick. And once you're in there and you get to know the people that are involved and have lots of followers, a lot of positive transactions, once you're in that group, if somebody burns you or whatever, you just send a message to those people and they're on them. And it doesn't take very long. And there's a guy that actually called the IG Comic Sheriff.
Right.
and yeah, he's great. He has a Patreon account, and I support him, because anytime there's somebody suspicious on there, he'll give you the whole story. He doesn't call anybody out without having all the facts. And then when he does officially find out that it's fraud, he will post pictures of the entire conversation, so you can see full transparency of what's happening. And people are actually afraid, and I like that. It's a really cool. The community, you're going to rely on the community on Instagram, and once you're familiar with those people, and you've done a couple of transactions, or you read about transactions, you start to feel pretty safe. And don't forget, goods and services is also an option. And PayPal does it's a 3% different as opposed to eBay with their 15 in total to 12.5 plus the 3%.
Yeah. The
3% of goods and services, you get a lot of protection from PayPal. So if you're not sure about anything, just tell the seller, hey, I feel more comfortable adding 3% to the bottom line here and going ahead and paying you in goods and services.
Yeah, and you're going to have an additional layer of protection if you use a Visa or an Amex that guarantees your purchases as well. I've never had to do that, but I know that my Amex, for example, covers everything up to 100%. So, Stephen, while we got you here, who are some of the people you like outside of Ali? I know you've got some more people you probably follow and you buy from.
Yeah, I used this guy. He's great. He's super friendly, very responsive to messages. For me, that's the key. I know that people are busy, and I know that they have. I mean, like Ali. Ali's got 2 other serious parts of his life that he spends a lot of time on. This is like third string hobby, and he's still very good at it. But I know that people are busy. But if you get some responsive people, that's where I start to feel comfortable. Have conversations with people. Obviously, if it's a $20 book, I'm the only idiot that spends, half an hour to an hour having conversations with these people over a $20 book. Just it's not about the sales for me. This is 90% hobby, 10% let me sell some stuff off so I can buy more stuff. I enjoy those conversations. But a person that I've been really friendly with is a guy out of Virginia. His name is Monster Comic Shop.
Mm.
It's got very good prices and excellent communication. A lot of people that I trade with, I've done successful trade transactions. There's a guy named Bruno, and it's his Instagram handle is Comics for Trade, I believe, and that's what he does. He actually charges a premium to sell. He prefers to trade, and just an old school kind of guy. So you find these people, and you like you said, you end up getting their life stories, and you give them your life stories, and you I mean, I've had more social encounters on Instagram over the last couple of months than I've had in actual real life over the last 8 months.
Especially now.
That's what I mean. And you mentioned the internet live sale, the IG live sales. I've done a few. I was actually the second stop on the Remedy tour. They called it the minor stop. It was a I think he called it a rest stop. It made me sound like a restroom. I didn't like that part. but my name is Minor Keys, and it was a minor pullover, and because I had a bunch of inventory that I was setting up in conventions for the next 3 months, and now I'm stuck with the inventory. Right. So I was able to get on there, and I tell you what, the response I had people reaching out to me that didn't buy anything from me. Just saying, hey man, I watched you for 3 hours. Thank you for taking my mind off everything for 3 hours. I had so much fun watching you. And I don't know, man. I don't want to sound like a commercial, like you said, but
it's strangely hypnotic though. I mean, I find myself watching these things, and my other half is like, what are you doing? You're staring at your phone for the entire evening. And I'm like, I'm watching people buy comics. It's strangely fascinating.
No, it's a circus, I really just admire people who can do this, because they'll be selling a book and it's up for auction. So people are bidding on it, and there's a lag between what they see and what the person bids. So they're dealing with that. And then they also do claim sales, which means they'll put another buy it now book over here on the side. And this is a buy it now for $5. It's some minor book to keep people occupied while other people are bidding. And so they're juggling sometimes 2 of those buy it now books while they're doing an auction, and recording who the person was who won each individual sale. It's amazing just to watch the orchestration of it all going down.
And John, like you mentioned, the algorithm, there's people that have, like, I think Torpedo does like 3 a week, and they have 100 viewers, 150 viewers. And there's people that are fighting over books at 20% over what I see them going for on eBay, which is strange. I think it's the FOMO factor,
it definitely is.
And but what they're seeing on their screen is actually different than what the host is seeing. So there's a lot of times where it's like, well, no, I claimed that first. I'm looking right at it. Well, that's not exactly what they see. So like you said, to add to that circus of things on the host end to try to keep everybody satisfied. But I think with a couple months under our belts, everybody's starting to understand how it works. And you win some and you lose some. That's all there is to it.
Some of it's like throwing chum to sharks. I mean, there was on the Remedy tour that Ollie was having a Silver Age comics in, I believe, New York or New Jersey. And there were like, there's this Venom 9.8. There's a Spider-Man cover 9.8. And then he gets to this Patsy Walker Summer Fashion Annual. And I'm like the only guy like, hey.
If you want to talk about throwing chum to sharks, try putting up one of those C2E2 Wolverine books.
Oh, the yellow ones, the banana
ones.
And
all you see is just claim. It's almost at whatever price they say. The last sold on eBay could be $160, and they say, all right, well, we got one, and it's $185, and there's 12 people saying claim instantly.
And you bring up another thing that that mentality of that FOMO reminds me of something else that we wanted to talk about. And it's something that I'm kind of puzzled by, but you guys can maybe walk me through it. The raffle thing, buying $2 tickets to get a book that's worth $100, but there's 100 slots. So the guy's making $200 off the book. I mean, any thoughts on the raffles? I don't know if it's good or bad.
Personally, I don't participate in them, and I don't hold them. I'm from Las Vegas, or not from there. I spent 10 years out in Las Vegas as in the poker industry, and I actually stay as far away from gambling as I can at this
It's
point.
like the lotto, right?
That's all it is. It's gambling, and I've spoke to lots and lots of people that have told me, I know that for what I've spent on raffles over the last month, I could have bought a 9.0 ASM 129, and I've not won a thing yet, but I can't stop.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and when you hear stuff like that, it's like, okay, maybe it's not a good thing. You do see the one winner post. Hey, I bought one entry for $5, and I've got this, Doctor Strange 169. It's really awesome, but that's only one out of, especially when people are running $100 slots, and of course, let's not forget the minis and the sub minis, and oh boy, it's I don't know how you put up with it. I know that I can get double what I could for a book, but the work that's involved with it, I'm not interested.
Oh, selling slots and I don't understand it either. And if that's what you like to do, if you like that chance, those odds, that's great. But just realize you're not really buying a book. You're participating in that kind of gambling. And if everything comes up correct, you will get a book, potentially. But for the most part, you just are just writing that money off. But again, if that's what you consider fun, then that's up to you. But I've never participated in any of the auction or any of the raffles, or they'll sell bundles of books on eBay too, where it's one of X number of bundles, and you're chasing the whatever it happens to be. I think those are money makers for the sellers, not necessarily the best thing for the buyers.
I've noticed a trend, just real quick, since you brought up mystery boxes. We are collectively a little bit older at this point. And the term mystery boxes has always been really taboo. It has. It's like you said, it's a gimmick for me to throw 25-cent books into a box with a chance of a hint of winning. But honestly, the way I've seen people been setting up these, they call them not so mystery boxes or whatever, they're actually getting really popular, and you can find some value in them.
Oh, good.
There's this guy, Gotham Comics, and he just custom makes boxes. He lays them out on the table. He's at Gotham Comics with an X on Instagram. He lays them out on the table. He shows exactly what's in there, and the value's there. It really is. And people they name the one they want, and I know it's not so much of a mystery box. And of course, a couple of them are filler issues. But, out of 10 books, this guy's throwing 3 or 4 keys in there. I think that the taboo will start to go a little bit away on mystery boxes over the next year or so. I think people are wise to them, and I think that people know that if they can sell mystery boxes with good stuff inside, then they'll have a customer for life.
Yeah,
that's really good to hear, because like you mentioned, from the old days, you would go to a convention and see mystery bag, $10, and it would be like a brown paper bag taped shut, and you would get it, and I'd be excited because it'd be like there's 9 issues of D and Agents.
So hey, I like D and Agents.
But the Susie, I always bring up Susie Orman on this podcast. The Susie Orman me is like, spend your money wisely, John. What are you doing here? So it's actually really encouraging, and I'm glad to hear that the mystery box is losing some of that stigma, because you're right. That's the first place I go to mentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that's going to come out of this last couple of months that will make us kind of change, obviously, everything and every aspect of life. But I think that building strong community and reaching out and doing stuff like this and getting on the podcast and following, there's just so much communication right now, because everybody can do it sitting from home, and everybody is bored and they're glued to their and I think a lot of people are taking advantage of it in a positive way, to build something away from eBay. I don't know, I'm not here to bash on eBay, but eBay has had its turn for a very long time, and now it's like, where can we spend that 12% and taxes? Let's not forget taxes.
Oh, for sure. And you say that because I went on, we had a 4-day weekend for Memorial Day when we recorded this, and I actually took the Friday. There, some of the lockdown was lifted here in Southern California, and I went to my local comic shop, and he was doing curbside, so you called ahead. and he would bring it out, and it's social distance, masks, the whole deal. And I was there for about a half an hour because he was bringing out boxes for me of recent back issues because he knows what I like. And he's like, here's some stuff for you. He would leave it outside for me and actually let me go through it and bring it in. I've been buying there for 15 years. I was one of like 9 people that came in a half an hour. And I was really happy to see that because I'm really worried about our local comic shops.
You know, the Remedy tour, and I hope this is not peeling back the curtain too much, but I'm personally pretty well connected with a lot of people on the Remedy tour. And not only are they keeping the lights on, but they're doing better numbers than they would have.
Wow.
If they were open. Yeah. And it's all because of this, like I said, this community coming together. And there is a lot of support from people. And some of it is because they want to support, and other is just like, I have this $1,200 stimulus check and I want to spend all my money on comic books right now.
That's what it was for.
Okay. Yeah. They're stimulating. All right.
I'm really encouraged and glad to see it, though. I mean, I love this hobby, obviously. And so anything that keeps it going, I'm really happy. And, you know, I since we have you here, Stephen, I'm going to ask you any hot, I'm putting you on the spot, any hot books you're looking out for, anything that's bubbling up for you in particular?
Well, that's the best thing that are honestly about me watching these live sales is that things that I didn't even know were hot. When I see people like for example, like that Steranko Cap 110, like I mean, I must have 5 copies of it sitting in my back issue. You know, 3 O's and 5 O's and 6 O's. Things are just reader copies. But when I see people fighting over that book at $30 and $40 in mid to low grade, I'm surprised because I had no idea. There's nothing significant. I mean, first, Madam Hydra.
Yeah, and you know, it's a beautiful cover.
The cover's good. I do not like Hulk covers at whatsoever. I think that they're goofy and silly, and there's nothing. But that one, that Steranko cover, that one I very much enjoy. But I mean, there's so many. Like I had no idea how hot Ultimate Fallout 4 was.
Yeah, that's my hot spot. Yeah, I'm glad to see it actually taking off finally.
Yeah, and then of course we got this preview of Miles Morales on the cover, and he's not actually in it, and now we have to debate whether it's his first appearance or not.
Right. Yeah.
And
there it is.
The Spider-Man Free Comic Book Day issue with the first jackpot.
Oh,
You know, I think I threw that away.
no.
Dude, we have a store here called McKay's, and they have like it's a used bookstore, and they have 20-cent, and I know that I've seen that in that bin, that 20-cent bin all day long. I don't know what the condition was, but I still would like to have it for 20 cents right now.
I wonder
People are
what's
going
gonna
crazy
happen.
with specs right now. Really.
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen when people try to slab it with store stickers and store stamps on it.
No,
You know,
I'll tell you what. One thing, a little more insight that I can give you guys. I'm having trouble, way more trouble, moving slab books than raw books right now.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with all the resources out there with GPA and Go Collect and whatever else that people use, or eBay sold sales, you know, there is a set price for an 8.0 Cap 117. I mean, that's what it is. And if I can't get it at a better price than that, then I'm not interested in it. But you have a raw one that you grade very fairly. You show all the corners up, and you say, in my opinion, this is an 8.0. That's different. I don't know what it is, but especially in these live sales, I have stopped submitting to CGC, and I don't want to get into. And you guys might be sponsored by CGC. I don't know.
We have no sponsors. We're free agents. We can say whatever we want.
I've had some pretty rough results, and I've been collecting.
Yeah, they're getting really brutal now. I'll back you up on that one.
Yeah, some pretty rough results. So I laid off for a while, and I realized that in the end, unless I'm going to get a 9.8, really, maybe a 9.6, I'm just better off selling everything raw.
I've never pre-screened before, and now I'm doing pre-screens.
Yeah, you have to. If you're pre-screening for a 9.8, 9.6, you have to.
Yeah.
Because I sent a batch of 20 to 30 Marvel Spotlight 28s out. I mean, these books they're unread, and they were flawless. And I mean, books were coming back 9.2, 9.0. And I actually had 2 at 9.0 with no grader notes.
Okay, you guys are scaring me. I got 10 Ultimate Fallout 4 second prints at CGC right now that are
It's too late.
ready for grading.
You
And I'm-
pre-screened them, right?
Oh, no, I didn't. I just sent it. I
Mm.
sent in 10. I got them cheap, and I sent them in because they're hot right now. So
You can
Speaking of
always
which,
call 'em.
have you seen the problems with Ultimate Fallout 4's the first print coming back 8.0s that were out of the bag?
I know the bags are a problem because the cover will rub against the poly bag, and you'll get color rubs on the spine.
Apparently, it's some kind of crease on the back.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Caused by I think that the flap that's in the back,
Right.
and it's not color breaking, but unless you press it out, it's coming back in 8.0 because it's long.
Wow. So it's
be careful on that one.
almost like a tattoos insert inside or something, right?
Oh, don't get me started on tattoos.
We talked about that last week. I still want to know what they were. So,
You
well,
can
hey,
actually zoom in on the ad, and you can see them. By the way, I did it while I was. I probably shouldn't say this. While I was driving, I was listening to your show, and I actually looked up the picture, and I'm like, hey, wait, you can kind of see him if you zoom in. But
please tell me it was a heart with mom on it. That's all I want.
one of them was a heart that says tattoos, and it had a dagger in it.
Okay.
One was an eagle. One was a cobra. Yeah, it's pretty. Oh, but by the way, don't we have do I have like a geek shirt on?
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. I got my John Byrne Captain America.
Okay. I'm wearing.
Snap. Where'd that come from?
That's nice. That's number 2, right?
Yeah.
And I got
Nice.
yeah. There it is. There's the boys.
Herbie
The
should
Beatles.
go first.
It's true. I think it just aesthetically fit better that way.
Just saying. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. We loved having you. Thank you for coming on and chatting with us. We're going to have you back again really soon. I can guarantee that. Maybe we'll do something on selling books on Instagram. We'll flip it a bit since you have some experience there.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. I really, really, really enjoy the show. I think it's very well done, and I look forward to it every week.
Great.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We'll see you, Stephen. Bye. Wow, it was really cool to have Stephen here, and make sure you follow him on Instagram. And hey, while you're at it, if you're not following us on Instagram, you should. It's at Bronze and Modern Gods on Instagram and at Facebook, and bronzeandmoderngods.com is up and live. And you can always email us at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com. Pretty easy to remember all
Nice
that.
and
Right?
simple. Nice and simple.
So it's time for the artist spotlight. I'm kind of giving a clue in my head, even though I think it's a Dave Cockrum drawing. But who's our artist spotlight this week, Richard?
One of my favorites, John Byrne. He did an incredible run with not only X-Men but with Alpha Flight, with Superman. He is an artist that spanned a whole series of popular books back in the day.
From the Bronze Age to the Copper Age to the Modern Age, John Byrne's been around. He's a kind of an institution. He synthesizes all sorts of influences, primarily a lot of Neil Adams, some Steve Ditko in there, some Gil Kane, and of course Jack Kirby. And his run on the Uncanny X-Men really just changed the game for that book. At the time, it was, slowly gaining popularity. But when Byrne came on board as both artist and co-plotter with Chris Claremont, that book was just the book back in the day. You did not go to the newsstand without picking up your Uncanny X-Men. You had to have it. And then he went over to DC and relaunched Superman, and that was a huge deal back then. I think one thing that's really underrated is his Fantastic Four run. It was a real back to basics approach. After years of that book just kind of laying fallow, he came and really revitalized it. And you can still get that run pretty affordably. Anything that sticks out for you from John Byrne that you really gravitate to?
Oh yeah, he's back in the day, back in the early 80s, stories like Dark Phoenix Saga, the Days of Future Past that he did along with Claremont. He introduced Kitty Pryde as a character. You mentioned She-Hulk, and She-Hulk was introduced into Fantastic Four as a replacement for the Thing. He did the She-Hulk run in 1989. That was amazing. It was that break the fourth wall kind of comedy before there was Deadpool. So
And now you've got his later She-Hulk run really valuable, which is a shock to me. The last couple of years going to shows, and I look and I see the infamous She-Hulk jump rope cover, and I'm like, why is that $140 book?
Oh yeah, he drew She-Hulk like no one else. It's an amazing cover. He had a number of books in that run there that were that good girl art kind of cover. But like you mentioned, he did a great run in Fantastic Four. That's one of the bulks of my original collection was his Fantastic Four run.
So good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was so good. And I really like when he went to started doing some independent work with Dark Horse, and he launched Next Men, which, get past the name. We get it. It's a ripoff. But The Next Men is actually a really good book. And he even brought it back for IDW about, 5-10 years ago and kind of try to finish it off. He's not the name he used to be, but you still have a lot of hardcore Byrne victims out there, myself included.
Oh,
Yeah.
bad pun.
You like that, don't you? So let's move on to our underrated books of the week. I'm going to shock you again for another week and pick a fairly modern book, maybe more copper. Would you consider? What's 96? Are we calling 96 copper?
That's copper. That's
all right.
copper.
We'll call it copper. My underrated book of this week is Carnage Mind Bomb, #1 and only. This is a book that came out when Marvel was really suffering. They were really close to bankruptcy. Print runs were way reduced from the big boom of the early 90s. And they did this strange little one-shot with Carnage, which ends up being the very first Carnage devoted book out there. Never knew this. Written by Warren Ellis, who I love. At the time he was coming off a run on Hellstorm, and he wasn't Warren Ellis yet. So Carnage Mind Bomb, it's got that low print run. It's got that cool red foil cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only 241 9.8s on the census, which is a pretty low census number for a book like that. And the GPA for it, 12-month average is $150 and 9.8, but it's heating up. I've seen sales in the last month for $180, $200. So again, not a book that's very common. And when you do find it, you might get a deal. I found it on a dealer's wall at a collector show here. I think I paid $10 for it a year ago. So they're still out there.
Yeah, and do you think that's going to see a bump once we see the new Venom Carnage movie coming out?
Oh yeah, is that happening?
Yeah. So definitely now is the time to buy those. As a matter of fact, all Venom titles are seeing some spikes because of rumors. But definitely, this is one that you want to keep in mind, and look through your dollar bins to see if you can come across one.
Speaking of dollar bins, what's your underrated book of the week?
Yeah, my underrated book definitely is a dollar bin book. I picked Alpha Flight #1. This is a John Byrne book. This is one of those books that I read back in the 80s. I bought my X-Men, I bought my Alpha Flight, bought my Fantastic Four, and it is a great story. I'm not really sure why it hasn't really latched on in terms of popularity. Marvel did in 2019. I did a facsimile edition of issue #1, which to me kind of signaled that they had some plan for the line, but nothing really came of it, unfortunately. The first appearance of the team was in X-Men 120 as a cameo. 121 was the first full appearance. The series originally launched in 1983, ran about 130 issues until 1994. Like I said, the facsimile edition came out in 2019.
Addiction.
Yeah. I always say, yeah, of course. It's the first Canadian super team, and it was a multicultural team. Back in the day, this was something that was not done, having all these different kinds of characters from different backgrounds form a team. They had the first openly gay Marvel superhero in North Star. Great book too. The story was really interesting. The stories that they ran were really interesting. The first issue was a setup issue, just like every first issue is kind of we're getting the band back together kind of issue. But great start to a run. There are some big keys later on in the run, but this number one to me has always been important. And I still am holding out that Marvel will do something with this team. Right now,
it's one of those books that just has been crippled by relaunch after relaunch, kind of like Legion for DC, where it's like, guys, find something and stick with it here.
Yeah, please. I love Legion. But the GPA on it is really low. It's only 116 for a 9.8. Strangely enough, there's a Canadian price variant, which is $336.
Hosers.
The funny thing is the facsimile has a GPA of $65. Only one sale on the census right now, so that's suspect. But there's 1,500 books out there that are graded. About half of them are 9.8. So this is not a rare book. This is not something that is going to immediately turn around and be profitable. But I think long term, it's a great team. Given Marvel's tendency towards multiculturalism now, I think it has some rich pickings for stories in the future. So buy them now where they're cheap.
I'll tell you what I remember about Alpha Flight. The first 12 issues, you're like reading it, you're like, wow, this is cool. And you get to the end of issue 12 and Byrne decides, I'm going to kill the main character.
They kill him off. His wife takes over. It's
I like Heather Hudson, but boy, what a twist.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it was not something that was, expected. And it definitely did, I think, affect the overall readership. But again, the book kept on for 130 issues. So
it didn't seem to cramp their style at all. So it kept going. So it's also one of those books that, it's got its ups and downs. I think, like you said, the Scott Lobdell run is a little underrated, in the early 100s. Also, the first, I believe, regular assignment for some artist named Jim Lee. He kind of disappeared, and we never heard from this guy again.
Right. And you got to, you just got to love the connection with the X-Men. For example, we see later on North Star go to the X-Men. We see the connection between the Canadian superheroes and Wolverine.
Yep.
And there's a lot of back and forth play between the X-Men and the Alpha Flight and Beta Flight and Gamma Flight and the other things.
And Omega Flight and besides that Jim Lee guy that nobody ever heard of, there was another guy, Will Spartasio, started on this book, and he actually did disappear. So there.
I think it's a good book. I won't call it a spec book. I will call it a book of interest.
For sure. Like, my Quasar from last week that nobody appreciated but me.
This is my Quasar. Yeah. I'll put it that way.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. We definitely want to thank Stephen from Minor Keys Comics for joining us this week. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. And while you're at it, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Bronze and Modern Gods. You can email us at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com or visit us at bronzeandmoderngods.com. And in the meantime, we're going to get out of here, get back to our local comic shop, support them this week if you can, do some curbside pickup, wash your hands, wear a mask, read some funny books. Right, Richard?
Right. DC's got books out this week. Marvel will have books out next week. Now it's the time to go back to your comic book store.
And make sure, if you listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, throw us a rate and review. We'd love you for it. And until next week, we will see you then.